In this video, I'll be covering Chizuru, as I've spent a lot of time with her since her release, and so I'd like to weigh my thoughts pertaining to pros and cons, and the future of this character. That being said, let's get started. So let's start with the overall pros. What do I think of Chizuru so far in terms of the positives? Well, for one, I've played her with most of the cast, and I think that she's quite well-rounded when it comes to who she can play with on her team. Of course, the more obvious picks can be something like Yuki, as she's obviously really good at things like AoE. Hugo is really good as well, just because he can really help to stack your Shadow of the Moon cards really effectively. I personally really like that team where it's Chizuru, Yuki, and Hugo coming together, where a lot of what Chizuru lacks, the rest of the team kind of helps her in that area. So my favorite card so far being Oni the Hunt. This is a fantastic card as it really provides value. It allows for a little bit more versatility in how she plays. You can go for that more bursty playstyle where you're just stacking as many Shadow of the Moon cards in your hand, or you can go for the Moon Slash variant where you're just constantly, producing more, Moon Slashes to get your Will-O-Wisp up, and therefore work towards your Moon Plus in the end. Tsukuyomi is fantastic as well for that reason. And so overall, conceptually, I think her playstyle being very unique compared to the rest of the cast is very, very cool. That being, she is very burst oriented. She wants to build up enough value through card stacking to basically unleash a full one-turn burst on the boss or whoever you're facing. So that to me is a huge plus. Pertaining to her ego, I'm sitting at E2 right now. And E2 is really great because this kind of goes right back to the whole point of stacking into your Shadow of the Moon. When you are able to get your Moon Plus, it really gives you a lot of value, and this E2 can really expedite that. Everything else pertaining to her memories, these are all really just icing on the cake, as I mentioned in my last video, for those of you who have watched it. If you haven't watched it, tune into that, as I do go over in detail her kit. But just for the sake of the review, her pros for me, I would say, definitely, I love her burst-oriented playstyle as it really suits me more. I like to have cards where I can stack and just combo into something powerful. With regards to her save data, it kind of resembles that. I do go for the Tsukuyomi, adding two extra hits to your Shadow of the Moon Plus, but I also do like at times, depending on what I'm up against, I do also prefer to play with the Create 2 Moon Slash variant as well, as I mentioned earlier. This is also very fun, and once again it adds a little bit more variety to her playstyle. That to me is really where she shines, where she can be placed on multiple different team comps and still earn value for not only herself but her teammates, depending on who you're really up against. So in the end, pros wise, I do feel like Chizuru at this current point in the game has a lot of value. She may not be as strong as other units in the game currently, if we're thinking about characters like Mei Lin or other DPS units, but that shouldn't deter anybody from playing her. Not every character needs to be absurdly strong. Of course, I've seen the video pertaining to Chizuru and her 1 million damage output. That of course goes back to what I was saying earlier about her building up all that value. It takes time, but again, it is worth it if you're looking into playing that playstyle. It doesn't suit everybody, and I think that's probably why people are a bit indifferent to her. But if you do enjoy a more slower, methodical, build up towards value type of playstyle, then Chizuru for sure is the role for you. Now, I'm going to talk about her cons and what I think that perhaps she's lacking in and where the team development-wise can make her better long-term. So the first con that I can definitely say is an issue for me is Bound at Dusk. And that's just because of the way the card works. Now, there are going to be some cases where Bound at Dusk can have its value in terms of reducing the cost of your cards, but at the same time, it does somewhat limit you because if you don't get that specific upgrade, you're left with other upgrades that are very, very conditional, very situational, and oftentimes can be a limiter or a real negative when you're in battle. For example, activating 2 random cards of your other combatants can be a drawback because depending on what you're doing in the actual fight, you may want to save those cards. And if they're activated, then you have an issue. Same thing with your lead cards. This is very team specific. This can definitely work with someone like Magna, who wants to have her lead cards activated to really make use of counterattacking. But other than that, you know, if you're just in a regular straightforward team, you don't want to be activating lead cards when you may want to save them for another turn, or you know, a burst related turn, for example. And then everything else is kind of like decreasing the cost of the highest value card by 2. But if you're running a low AP team, then this is kind of like out of the question as well. So a lot of these epiphanies are somewhat lacking, and so I hope the devs can really look at this and consider to maybe fixing these, maybe giving us the choice of choosing which cards to activate. That would be better versus them being random. And then also for me, a buff to her damage numbers, just a little bit, not too much, but a buff would be really, really nice, especially in the area of her karmic flames. I would say this because this is kind of like the engine. This is the prime starting, you know, point for building up your will-o-wisps. And so just having this card do a little bit more than just add a shackle to your enemy, I think would be better if you just add a little bit more damage, more incentive to want to use the card. So buffing this card a little bit in terms of its damage numbers would be very, really nice. And speaking of buffs, today's sponsor is brought to you by Buff, a website that allows you to top up your game for CZN among other popular games on your app or on PC. So if you're looking to perhaps grab a battle pass or grab a nice monthly pack for your CZN needs, then Buff is definitely there for you. They have everything you need. Customer service is top notch, and I've been using them for a bit, and I have to say they've definitely been buffing my account all the way through. So if you're looking to really get the most value out of your CZN experience, then be sure to check out buff.com, log in, grab your top-ups, and get the ball rolling. That being said, let's get back to the video. So, as pertaining to her cards, those are the cons for me. I think Karmic Flames just needs a little bit of an extra push in terms of its numerical value and just more, more incentive to use the card. Right now, you do turn 1 and then you kind of let it go, and then you just don't really think about it. But it would be nice if you can use it to do a little bit more for her burst damage and comboing. And then as far as her egos are concerned, as I mentioned earlier, I'm sitting at E2, but do I really need E2? Not really. It was nice to get it, and it definitely added a lot more value to her overall playstyle. It really helped to speed things up, to get her burst damage numbers up. But hopefully they can maybe adjust some of those, again, damage numbers to make it look a little bit more appealing. I don't think there's really anything else that stands out to me that's negative. I think that if you're able to build her well enough, she has value regardless. So in the end, I think that what really matters is ensuring that players enjoy the character. Is her playstyle fun? Yes. Is she fun to play with other characters? Yes. So I think the devs have done a wonderful job on that area, but just in terms of what she can do to match the damage output of other units, I definitely would say just some slight damage number increases would help her. And other than that, I think she's fine the way she is. As I said, she doesn't need to be the super top of the chain, crazy Malin type of approach, but just enough to where she can at least be of good merit for multiple team compositions. And that's about it. Overall, I love Chizuru so far. What do you folks think of her in the comments section? Let me know, and look forward to more content with Chizuru very soon. That being said, New Warriors, as always, stay strong, keep fighting, and may the force be with you all, always. All right? Take care.